shines forth. After years of research, Buff Perry now believes the stone was brought to America by secret societies from Scotland in the years preceding the American Revolution. For them, the stone was to empower the foundation of a new republic.
Why is it called the foundation stone for America?
The foundation stone for America because it was brought here by the Jacobites who had been arrested at Preston in 1715 in their attempt to overthrow the kings.
The kings in question are the line of English kings who succeeded King James II, who was deposed from his throne in 1688 and succeeded by William of Orange. But the supporters of James rebelled against the deposing of their favored monarch. They were called Jacobites, a name derived from Jacobus, the Latin version of James. In short, the Jacobites were mostly Scottish Highlanders, who were determined to restore James and the House of Stuart to the English throne. But the reason King James II was deposed presents a powerful clue as to why America has been steadily transformed into a cornucopia of pagan and occult philosophies.
King James had proclaimed that Jews and Presbyterians and Quakers and Catholics and even Ottomans should be embraced by the Church of England. That's why he was deposed. So the subsequent formation of this Jacobite revolutionary social order was in reaction to his deposition and in support of his embrace of Jews, Presbyterians, Quakers, Catholics, and Ottoman Muslims.
Since the Protestant English rejected James' ecumenical ideas and also feared that the hand of Rome was somehow involved, the Scottish Jacobites engaged in a series of rebellions against the new line of English kings. But their rebellions were ultimately crushed, and as a result, many of the Jacobite fugitives fled across the waters of the Atlantic to America.
In 1715, there was a rebellion in a place called Preston, northern England. Many of the Jacobites were arrested and deported or exiled to America. Standish family, Anson family, notable families in American history, pre-revolutionary history. Families that then went on to become part of the War of Independence, the American Revolution. Notable Masons and Freemasons.
These notable Freemasons were the survivors of the Jacobite resistance in Scotland, a land with a long history of secret societies, whose influence is both mysterious and extensive. Consider that centuries earlier, the Knights Templar fled persecution and are said to have hidden themselves within the Masonic lodges of Scotland. In the 19th century, Albert Pike would develop the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which would become the most powerful arm of Masonry in America. Meanwhile, President Woodrow Wilson once said that every line of strength in American history is a line colored with Scottish blood. Perhaps the best example of the Jacobite influence in early America is found in Hugh Mercer, often called an unsung hero of the American Revolution. Mercer was a Jacobite doctor who supported the cause against England until their final defeat at the Battle of Culloden in 1746. He was then forced to flee to America, leaving his homeland behind. He served as brigadier general in the Continental Army and was a close personal advisor to George Washington. It's even believed that it was Hugh Mercer who suggested that General Washington make his famous crossing of the Delaware River on Christmas of 1776. Incredibly, one of Hugh Mercer's children would marry into the Patton family and ultimately produce World War II hero General George S. Patton, whose blood and guts reputation was certainly in keeping with the Jacobite tradition. But in the years prior to the American Revolution, Hugh Mercer became a member of the Masonic Lodge in Fredericksburg, Virginia, the early members of which are said to be a who's who of Revolutionary War heroes. Mercer's fellow members included George Washington and James Monroe. At least 8 Masons from this lodge served as generals during the American Revolution, while 2 of them would go on to become American presidents. The Fredericksburg Lodge still exists today, and on its website states that it was chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland, July 21st, 1758. A history of the lodge says the following. The lodge was formed by men who had been made Masons earlier and elsewhere, Scotland most likely. There was in Fredericksburg in the 1750s a notable Scottish mercantile presence. Many of those early lodge members bore Scottish surnames, and it was to Scotland, not England, that the lodge later turned for a proper charter. Is it possible that the influence of the Scottish Jacobite rebels worked as an undercurrent that helped to inspire the American Revolution?
These families, they come under the general umbrella term Jacobite, were the real core population that led to ultimately to the War of Independence.
Consider that the 3 Jacobite uprisings are referred to as rebellions. During the Revolutionary era, the motto, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God," was adopted, a motto that Benjamin Franklin wanted to include on the design of the Great Seal. But rebellion against authority was not exactly the tradition of the Puritan Pilgrims who began the country. Their focus was on the biblical teaching of Jesus and the apostles. When Harvard University was founded in 1636, its motto was "Truth for Christ and the Church." Harvard's statement of purpose went on to say that the main end of life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ, which is eternal life. But by the Revolutionary era, references to God were more ambiguous, often referring to the guidance of divine providence. It has been noted that the revolutionary founders were not known for quoting the sayings of Jesus Christ. They certainly mentioned his name or made reference to Christianity. They said things like, "No king but King Jesus." But his teachings were absent from their writings. Sayings like, "Turn the other cheek," "Love your enemies," and "Bless them that curse you," had no place in a movement that was founded on rebellion. As a result, it becomes little surprise that once the new republic was founded, biblical imagery of Christ and the Gospels would be missing from the capital city. Instead, a celebration of pagan gods and goddesses would prevail, which seems to represent the ecumenical views of King James II and his Masonic Jacobite rebels. The chief Jacobite symbol was the white rose, traditionally worn on their Scottish bonnets. This dagger features a Jacobite rose with a pentagram in the center. Notice that the pentagram has a dot in the middle, which usually signifies the sun. The 5 points of the star symbolize the rotation of Venus around the sun, forming a pentagram over an 8-year cycle. This symbol was well known to the secret societies of Europe. and is found carved throughout Washington, D.C. In light of these things, the question Americans today should ask is, if the idea of rebellion was in obedience to God, what God did they mean? Which brings us back to the Stone of Destiny, a mysterious artifact whose original owner has for centuries been acknowledged as the greatest rebel of all time. The belief is that the real stone was not captured by the English in 1296, but was somehow hidden away by the Scots. Buff Perry believes that centuries later, the Jacobites brought the stone with them to America.
To bring it over here was to, first of all, find refuge or sanctuary for it, but also to indicate this is where the Jacobite Revolution might really be successful. 1715, the first rebellion, 1745, the second, and then we have the 1770s with the Declaration of Independence. We have the Boston Tea Party, then we have the sort of prolonged war of independence, all brought about by these same people. So foundation stone, meaning this stone now is going to be placed here where the order will have its ultimate political fruition and success. Well, this is Helena Roerich, a painting of her, I believe by Nicholas, and she's bearing the white rose, which came to mean what you swear an oath of secrecy in relation to. And the Jacobites would swear sub rosa, with a single white rose. Her left hand, hand and elbow, are right alongside of the casket. The symbology is extremely interesting. Just the bearing of the white rose alone is, to me, highly suggestive of what she felt to be a secret mission that was associated with this stone that they received.
It seems clear that their secret mission had to do with creating a one-world order through the League of Nations and by supporting the New Deal, which both FDR and Henry Wallace believed was the new order of the ages. It was during FDR's administration that the National Archives building was completed, with the figure of what appears to be a perfected man carved upon it. The figure is called Destiny, with the word destiny used repeatedly by the key figures who influenced the dollar bill, FDR, Wallace, and Manly Hall. Is it possible that they all believed the Stone of Destiny had come to America through Nicholas Roerich? But exactly what destiny they had in mind for America and the world must give us pause when we consider the full history of the stone. According to an ancient legend, the stone that fell from heaven is a jewel that was cut from the crown of Lucifer himself. Commenting on this, Manly P. Hall writes that the lapis exilis, crown jewel of the archangel Lucifer, fell from heaven. Michael, archangel of the sun, at the head of the angelic hosts, swooped down upon Lucifer. During the conflict, Michael with his sword struck the flashing lapis exilis from the coronet of his adversary, and the green stone fell into the dark and immeasurable abyss. Hall goes on to say that out of Lucifer's radiant gem was fashioned the Sangreal, or Holy Grail, from which Christ is said to have